get up and I would go into warrior and I was strong. And I reflect on that and I think, yes, I can get up again. I can. I know how to do that. I know how to collapse and I know how to lift up again.
Welcome, everyone, to Psychedelics in Recovery Integration Radio, a safe space where PIR, also known as Person in Recovery, come and share their experience, strengths, and hope with you. My name is Anne, and I'm a person in recovery and your host today.
Integration Radio is a podcast by Psychedelics in Recovery. The views shared are personal and do not represent PIR as a whole. PIR does not promote, endorse, or sell psychedelics or any substances. This podcast is for reflection and integration only, and is not medical or professional advice. We ask listeners to respect anonymity and the principles of recovery. Please see the safety and ethics page on our website for additional resources, psychedelicsinrecovery.org.
This radio is part of PIR's ongoing effort to carry the message of recovery to those still suffering. In alignment with the 12 traditions that guide our fellowship, this program will not be funded by outside contributions. PIR, as an organization, has no opinion on outside issues. While we discuss plant medicine and psychedelic in this episode, PIR does not promote or endorse their use. The spiritual intention of PIR and of this broadcast is to create diverse, safe, and sacred spaces for all who wish to recover, always striving for humility over hubris and principles before personalities. Whether you're new to the idea of integrating psychedelics or plant medicine in your recovery process, new to recovery or a long-time member of the fellowship, our aim is to create a space of curiosity, connection, and hope. In this first series, entitled Journeys of Healing, we explore the intersection of recovery and the transformative potential of psychedelic medicine through some of our members' experience. So settle in, open your mind, and let's walk this path together. This is the PIR podcast. And today it gives me great pleasure to welcome Brenda, who has come to share her experience, strengths, and hope with us. Welcome, Brenda. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, it's nice to be here. A little nervous, but oh well, it's all right.
It's just a conversation between you and me.
Right.
That hopefully a lot of people will listen to at some point. But for now, it's just you and me.
I like that.
But to get started, can you give me, or give us rather, a bit of background about your story of addiction? How did you come into recovery in the first place?
Sure. I came by it very young. I come by it honestly. I come by it hardly. I come by it with many, many experiences with trying to get sober in the traditional sense and relapsing and falling into the darkness again of depression, trauma responses. It's been a very long struggle. I started when I was 14 years old, my first time in treatment. I was diagnosed as an alcoholic and drug addict in 1980. I was 14, so for the math, I'll be 60 in March. And so I've been at this a very long time. I had a lot of trauma with what was happening in my home during that time. And my parents knew that I began using pot and alcohol, and they sent me to treatment to get sober. And so that alone was pretty traumatic as a kid. I was 14 years old. And this was in 1980 when treatment centers were just really becoming a thing. And it was very shame-based treatment. They took your clothes away, put you in hospital pajamas. And also I was in there with adult men and women. And so I was sent to 3 of these different places in my early teens. And so I had a label very quickly in my life that I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict at 14. So I've known this forever, right? I've always believed this and known this, and somehow I was broken. With the trauma, it really caught up with me in my early 20s, and I was clean and sober. I had gotten married and had 2 children quite young. And I was in a state of trauma, I think. I was not healthy. I was out of control in my mind. I was functioning well in the world, but inside I was dying. It was really dark. And I got divorced and began drinking. And I say that, and I think when somebody says I'm an alcoholic, I think there's a whole world of thoughts that we come up with about that. I was a very high functioning alcoholic, and I drank for 7 years, and my children were getting older. They were getting into their early teens, and I knew that I needed to quit. And I was terrified to go back to treatment because of my past experiences, and also terrified to go back to AA, quite frankly, because that was also a very unsafe place as a kid. And also all these messages of being born and raised Catholic and all these traditional ways of dealing with a woman like me. So she's an alcoholic, she's a drug addict, she's got trauma, she has depression. So these are my labels that I'm carrying around in life. And I did, though, however, get in 1998, I went to treatment, and it really did change my life. And I found the second step, which had always eluded me. Finding a higher power was always really scary to me, because I had this belief system that God was punishing and that I wasn't good enough and I need to hide. And something cracked open in me, and I came to believe that there really was a greater power, greater than myself. And I found that through other people and what their beliefs were. And I kept trying it on and trying to make it work and get this power that was going to keep me clean and sober and fix me. I did that for a long time. My past traumas and depression really kicked into high gear about 8 years into sobriety, and in the traditional sense, sobriety. I had a procedure and discovered opioids, and there I went. And that was in about 2011. And since that time, I've just been struggling on and off and on and off. And I've been to over 10 treatments in my lifetime, and many, many workshops. I have a lot of education in recovery and therapy. I've done it all. I desire to live life. And there's been this hole in me that I have not been able to fill for probably forever. I recall being a very little girl, and I do recall that joy and that freedom and the zest for life. But somewhere that went away for me in early childhood, and I've never been able to find that again. Through nothing but sheer desperation and hope, a glimmer of hope, did I decide to add psychedelics into my recovery. Sure.
Tell me a bit more about that.
Sure. Well, I used a lot of acid as a kid because, of course, it's cheap and it's great. And I did a lot of it. Very, very different than the intentional use of what I'm doing today. Same effects to some degree, but certainly different uses. But no, my depression was just, it was so bad. I'll just say it honestly. I wanted to die. Hour of every day it crossed my mind, and it was just pervasive and so dark. And people say, well, what is it? You've got a great life. It's like, I don't know what it is. If I knew what it was, God knows I would have rooted it out a long time ago, whatever it is. I've done plenty of therapy. I've done EMDR. I've done TMS, which is, my next steps were shock treatment or a vagal nerve stimulation probe through surgery. So it was suggested that I start ketamine infusions. And that was about, it'll be 2 years in December. So 2 years ago in December, I started ketamine treatments. And I was going in for infusions twice a week. And they were hard. I'm not going to lie. I've had some really, really uncomfortable situations in those settings. However, my depression was lifting. The thoughts were not as pervasive, and I was able to at least function. So I knew that something was working with psychedelics, but I still couldn't get to it, whatever it is. A woman through PIR saw me Like she really saw me. She saw my struggle. She saw my pain. She saw my desire to get out of the darkness. And she said she'd help me. I asked her, I said, will you help me? And she said, yes. And this is a woman who's been sober for over 50 years. And she saw me. And I was able to go work with her and a shaman for a week. And we had ceremony, and it was work. The ceremonies were work. I thought, okay, I'm just going to go. I'm going to get infused. I'm going to do all these psychedelics. I'm going to, lay down on the floor for 5 days or whatever. I really didn't know. And what happened was, first of all, it was very physical. I took the medicine very intentionally with my friends. They led me through it. I saw and I felt things that I've never seen or felt before. And I felt deep grief like I've never felt before in my life. I felt deep joy, unlike anything I've ever felt. Everything in between. There was fear. There were all these feelings that were just huge, but I felt them literally releasing it from my body. So when they say, what is it, Brenda? It's like, whatever it is releasing from my body with these experiences and allowing my mind to have a much deeper compassion for myself and also for others. It was a gift and it was life-changing. And that was only this summer. And I was able to feel the value of my soul, which I had never felt before, or hadn't rather, since I was a young child. So it's been, I've gotten home and I no longer do infusions. I use ketamine at home setting very, very intentionally. It's helping me to release and uncover all the untruths that and all the beliefs about myself that I've held so tightly. It's allowed me to feel a power greater than myself. And that power greater than myself now has an opportunity to work within me at a higher level, at a deeper level. It's so hard to explain. I wish I had the words to explain what has happened. I've been told, sometimes there are no words, there are only feelings. All I can say is, I don't want to die anymore. And sometimes I think, I should be further along than I am. And then I think, wait a minute, really far, you're alive. You're good. You're good. You're doing it. And there's also been a tremendous fight within myself of everything that I've ever learned from traditional AA settings, traditional treatment settings, traditional everything, and that trying to diffuse my judgments about using these medications, using this healing medications, that's been a real challenge. But I'm trying to live in the solution, and this has been life-changing, life-saving for me. I don't really know another way to say it.
No, that's a beautiful experience. I understand that words don't do justice to what we experience, to what we live, to what we go through. But you did a very good job of explaining it, and it's inspirational. And I'm so pleased to hear you're no longer suffering with those dark thoughts every hour of every day. You said that for the first time you saw and felt things like you'd never seen or felt before. Can you elaborate on this? Or would you rather not share?
Sure. There was a grieving. I've had cancer and I've lost body parts, and there was a grieving period during the journey where I really, really grieved. I really felt it and allowed myself to have compassion for when I went through. And I don't know that I've had a lot of compassion for myself. And that grew. It allowed me to release some shame. It allowed me to release some fear. and allowed me to just be with it and sit with it and grieve and release and accept. It was good. It was good. It's hard though. I mean, it's hard work. I was very surprised at how physical this work was. I was very surprised at how my body I kept moving. I did so much yoga, and I actually got I got a tattoo of a warrior woman on my arm after all those experiences because I felt like a warrior woman. I found my strength. I remember standing in warrior pose and I was strong. And I reflect on that strength often because what would happen during ceremony is I would collapse physically and go into child's pose and be scared and not want to get up. And then somewhere in me, it was through my shaman and my friend, they would say, get up. And I would get up and I would go into warrior and I was strong. And I reflect on that and I think, yes, I can get up again. I can. I know how to do that. I know how to collapse and I know how to lift up again.
Yeah, that's very empowering.
Yes.
It is. And the fact that you are saying it is hard work, I was surprised initially when we arrived in a village in the Amazon, in a Daime village. And before the ceremony, everyone would say, bom trabalho, which means good work, but work in the sense of labor. And like you, I expected it to be rather passive, but it isn't. There is a lot of things happening in the body. And sometimes it takes a shape of shaking or crying or even screaming. But the body, and in the Daime tradition, there's a lot of dancing, like a form of trance dancing, and it's exhausting, but the body needs to move to process all this. There's that fabulous book that a lot of our listener would have heard of, The Body Keeps the Score, and it's incredible to be able to release all those unexpressed feelings that we've stored. Because if it's, healing through feelings and they have to come out. And this is something that is not often or not often enough talked about when we talk about psychedelic experience. We talk about the visual, we talk about the penny dropping moment, the realization, but the somatic experience is incredibly important in some cases. It was my case and it seems like it was your case. And I'd never heard of the yoga pose of the warrior as a way of releasing and empowering, but that certainly seems very tempting for next time.
Very powerful. Yeah. And I didn't realize how much my body has stored of trauma, and truly. And I think that as being labeled an alcoholic, and I don't like that label, of course, and a drug addict, I kind of have changed my thinking a little bit about that. And in some ways, I think that perhaps we have this spiritual thirst that's unquenchable. And perhaps the world is kind of hard for people with really sensitive souls. And we've searched for spirits. I mean, alcohol is called a spirit. And we've searched for spirit for so long and consequently have destroyed our lives to some degree. And I think that once the spirit can be found and revealed and reveled in, I will suffer with looking for that calming effect and that high, so to speak, that relief of self. And I think the relief of self has come in many ways through working with these medicines and seeing who my true self really is. And that is a spiritual being. I've heard, we've all heard a million times, I'm just a spiritual being in a human body, but I kind of get it now. Yeah. It's really crazy. And all those little hippie sayings, it's like, yeah, I dig it. I mean, I get it all. It's so groovy, all of it. Feeling the vibe, all of it, the vibration. I have found that in ceremony, I can feel the vibrations of music. I can see music. Art has opened up for me in a way that never would have before. Art looks differently. It feels different. Song, love, everything has been amplified. My depressed brain is awakening.
And feeling.
and feeling. And I'm completely off antidepressants. I never thought I would be off antidepressants. And I'm not advocating one way or another for anybody. My own experience, I was on them for almost 20 years. I had a psychiatrist that literally I had him on a monthly retainer. I could call him, talk to him whenever I wanted or needed. And the variations of the antidepressants in terms of what they are and the dosing and, adding them together, it was a lot. And I'm completely off them and I feel better. I'm not numb anymore. I can feel joy more. I can cry easier, but I also do feel joy. And that's newer for me at the intensity levels that they're at now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think most addicts, alcoholics are spiritual seekers. And
Yes.
we search in the wrong places. I searched in the wrong places and I got lost. And I remember the first time I smoked pot, I was in my teenage years and I felt it. I was like, yes, that's what I need to get to where I want. The music sounded different. I could visualize music, but something went wrong. And I started smoking pot way too much and first thing in the morning. And the disease of more invaded me and ruined everything. But that spiritual quest is I think, what is behind the bondage that we have with drugs. Is really to try and relieve from the bondage of self and get bonded to a drug instead until the freedom that is brought to us by those wonderful sacred medicine and the people who know how to use them. And I think that's really important point that you mentioned, your friend and the shaman. I remember my first ceremony, had I not been surrounded by friends, facilitator, shaman, I would have missed out the meaning of what I'd seen and felt. And that's why I think the integration part of any ceremonies is for me the most important part. And I wonder if you could tell us about your integration practice, whether after ceremony or whilst you're microdosing. What's your integration practice? What does it look like?
Well, it was very confusing at first. I was simply going in for the ketamine treatments and in a clinical setting. So there was no real integration period. I was, I had an IV infusion. I was left alone in a room for 45 minutes, which that's the way it's done now, I guess. After I went and worked with the shaman, I did a lot of pre-work. They had asked me to journal and they asked some really pointed questions, and it was for myself, not for them. And there were questions of how do you relate to God? How do you relate to your body? Where do you get your wisdom from? Really in-depth questions. And so I was doing a lot of journaling in preparation for my trip this summer. And I was desperate. I was completely desperate. I'm married, and it was traditionally my husband and I have been very AA. And this is, it's been a lot to kind of get our heads around this newer way of working with my labels. And I had to go. So I did the work. I answered all the questions. I brought my journal and I got quiet and I went with a leap of faith. Again, I thought it was going to be passive. I'd done a lot of work ahead of time with the journaling and writing and answering the questions, but I went just open, kind of passive and trusting. I trusted, and they're trustworthy. These are experienced people who I think it's really important to be in good hands. I've had, being on all the psychiatric medications that I had been on in the past, this is some risky stuff you want to be careful with.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So I knew I was safe. So as I had said, the actual experience of in ceremony was very intense. It was long. It was exhausting. When I got home, I didn't want to be home. I wanted to be back in safety. I wanted to be I just want to be safe in a spiritual sense. At any rate, I had a lot of questions, and a lot of my friend helped me a lot developing some questions, some workbooks, some explanation of what was going on with me. I wanted to sustain the intense connection that I had with spirit. And it was really hard to sustain it because the world goes on. I have found that through either doing another journey brought me back to the space that I worked with these people in, and it was able to help me get connected again to what the quote truth is. I wish I had more words I wish I had a way to communicate what this has done in my life for me doing this work. All I can tell you is that I continue to journal, which has been incredibly healing for me, helping me to work through things. I am looking at things at a much deeper level spiritually, trying to stay in the solution and not allow the world, the external world, to wear me down. Trying to keep that protection up, because I can get really crazy, very triggered with things going on in the world are pretty upsetting to me right now. And I'm trying to remember the truth of what I have found. And that is, we are all one. We are all connected. I am safe. I'm leaving again in a few days to do another ceremony. And so I'm doing a lot of work up front again, a lot of introspection, a lot of intentionality, journaling, reading, letting go, staying in calmer areas, going in nature a lot, playing with my dog, being with my granddaughter, just really staying in the world that I want to be in.
Yeah. I'm reading a book at the moment called Sermon on the Mount. And he was saying heaven is actually amongst us. Heaven is not a place up in the sky with a secret door that you only enter if you've been a good girl. Heaven is everywhere, and you are in heaven already if you are capable of seeing it. If your heart is pure enough, if your spirit is pure enough, you are in heaven. And it's true that in our current year, this time where we live, it's difficult to remember we are in heaven when you switch on the television, when you see what's going on in the streets. But we are. And it's that balance, that struggle of also remembering we're spiritual beings having a human experience, but sometimes the human side takes over. And that's why I think we recovered people are lucky, because we have that practice we can go back to. We have fellows who understand what we are going through, and we have a toolbox that we can use, and it's more than 98% of the population. And I think we are the lucky ones. We are the lucky ones to be in recovery. We are the lucky ones to be in recovery with plant medicine and all the sacred traditions and people that come with it. And that takes me to my next point is, how did you come across psychedelics and recovery and the people in recovery that use plant medicine from your traditional AA background?
Yeah. I had a friend. She had started using cannabis for complex PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big decision to begin using cannabis. And I started using it and I got some relief. I started feeling a little better. I don't know if I got relief. Let's put it that way. And also, I think I get insight. And there are some different strains. I mean, there are ways to use this medicinally. I do have a medical license for it, blah, blah, blah. Whatever works for you. What I love about PIR is your recovery is your recovery. There is no judgment. However you do you just do you. During my time that I worked this summer, I was my everything in my brain was completely open, and my shaman was telling me, trust yourself. The inner teacher is here. Do not let other people tell you who you are. You know who you are. You are love. And to remember that was very helpful to get in.
And so when did you discover PIR? How long ago was that?
It was during that same time. It was probably about 3 years ago, but I was still really struggling with drinking. And
Right.
so I needed to get that under control. And I had to quit drinking. That is not good for me. Although you hear me rejecting the term alcoholic. And because the way I kind of look at that whole thing is I feel like my spirit just got all that residual earthly toxic sludge on it. And I have to free that toxic sludge. And the medicine helps me with that.
Yeah. I think that's why I also like microdosing,
Yes.
because that helps me on a day-to-day basis. Bring me back to source, bring me back to that feeling that I'm loved, that I'm held, and that wonderful connection I have with other people too. I think sometimes ceremonies are great. Ceremonies are great, not sometimes. They're always great. But the benefits of the ceremony wears off because life gets in the way, because people are annoying, especially the one closer to me can get to me. But I have found that by mindfully practicing microdosing, not constantly, with breaks, of course, I have that connection, that thread that keeps on holding me. Maybe one day I will be stable enough that I don't need to. But for now, plant medicine is part of my daily life.
Mm-hmm.
And so be it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a much needed remedy for me.
Yes. I love that. I love that we can say that without judgment. I love that we can say, this is my recovery. I get to define my life. What a freedom.
Yes.
And I still struggle with my own judgments from all those decades of learning in traditional ways. That's been hard. I will say that's been a real struggle to let all that dogma go.
Yeah, I can imagine, because it was decades for you of brainwashing. Necessary brainwashing, but brainwashing nevertheless. For me, it was only a couple of years of a bit more, 3.5 years, 2 years sober when I joined PIR and started microdosing. But still, being raised as a Catholic, that guilt, is not an easy thing to get rid of. But I have found that being in PIR, and where everyone defines their own vision and version of recovery, has allowed me to be far less judgmental to others. And by being less judgmental with others, I then became less judgmental to myself. And
yes.
It's the same with compassion. Self-compassion was completely strange to me, a concept I had never understood. For me, compassion was pity, and there was no self-pity allowed. But by practicing compassion for other people, understanding their struggle, I began to be able to practice self-compassion. And that's what I love about this fellowship, is that it actually practice what you preach when you are together, and open-mindedness and honesty and all these things that you hear in other fellowships, but you never see it practiced firsthand.
It's everywhere.
Starting with open-mindedness, there's not much of that going on. And that's why when I got to PIR, I was like, these are my people.
Yes.
It's
I felt so broken. I felt so hopeless, because here I've been trying to stay clean and sober since I was 14 years old. And I can't do it. And what's wrong with me? Rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. And I went in on that forever. It's like, what aren't I doing? What am I missing? Am I constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself? Am I not doing a thorough enough 4-step? Am I, what is wrong with me that I don't get this? And everybody else does. And God knows I've been through enough training and treatment centers and all this. And it's just that rarely is not really the right word. Not many. I think it's like 10% of people that just do AA will, quote, make it, so just in the traditional sense again. Well, I'm part of 90%. So, okay, I'm not part of that club anymore. And I felt very judged and very pitied, and I felt broken when I would go in those rooms and say, I relapsed again. The only thing worse than I made a mistake is I made the same mistake again. So it's so beautiful to know that I'm just a regular person getting through life, doing the best she can. Struggles, but everybody has those. And I don't think that that my main problem is that I'm selfish and self-centered, as I've been taught and told. And I think my main problem is that just being a human is kind of a big trip, right? It's kind of hard. And it can be beautiful and all points in between. And I think finding the gray has been really important. But it's been a very tough hurdle for me to get through, overcoming my judgment from all my traditional training that I've had. Yeah.
Yeah, overwriting that script is terribly difficult. And you were also raised Catholic, so I think you've got the double whammy here, like I did. I hear they have an acronym in New York. It's called CIA. It's Catholic Irish Alcoholic.
Oh yeah, baby. Got the Russian thing on this side, but yeah, we're included too. Yeah, I love it.
And that's difficult to overcome, but it's not impossible. And every day a little bit better than yesterday, and that's all that is desired and required, really. And even if today is worse than yesterday, there is always tomorrow.
Right.
And a place to talk about it and to voice those frustrations so they don't become shame.
Yeah.
And so, go on, please.
I think too, when you consider the cultural and generational traumas that we've had, and you hear a lot about breaking the family cycle, you hear a lot about generational trauma, you just hear a lot about all that stuff. And I think it's important for me to take that all into account. Of some of this is my carried trauma, but some of this is really carried over. I had mentioned I have 2 grandchildren, and I feel like I'm responsible to, because I have knowledge of it, to heal. And for not only them, but for me. I used to always say, sometimes I always need somebody else to do something for, and it's becoming at almost 60 years old that I want to do some things for myself.
Good.
So it's a whole...
Yeah.
So, there's that, and the soul felt its worth.
Mm-hmm.
That has happened for me. And I need to continue with daily spiritual practices to continue that happening and strengthening and opening, to keep my spirit and my soul clear of all the daily gunk that gets on it from the world.
And sometime twice a day.
Exactly.
And finally, we're getting to the end of this podcast, sadly. But I've got a question that I ask everyone to close with. And it's, what are you struggling with? Or what is the one challenge in your life that you are working to overcome currently?
Oh my gosh, it's so huge right now. I just got back from visiting my parents in California. So that alone is saying a lot, right? But I felt very re-triggered. I felt very triggered by both of them. And I was really uprooted. I was not rooted. I was not grounded. I was just everywhere. It was not good. I should not have gone. Politically, it's very, very difficult with my father in particular. Brings up a lot of fear, the political situation and his alignment with that part of the world that's really terrifying to me right now. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to forgive. I'm trying to understand why evil exists and people subscribe to it and support it. What I want to do, I don't know, Anne. I don't know what to do with this. I just don't. Do you forgive? But then wait a minute, aren't people supposed to stand up? I mean, so yeah, I'm super struggling with the political situation that we have going on here, and gets me really upset, gets me going, and I would like some relief from that. I don't know how to do it.
I think you're not the only one. I thankfully do not live on these shores. I'm the other side of the pond. We do have our challenges too, but I feel for you. I think the only thing that comes to mind in a situation like this is a serenity prayer. And there are things that we cannot change, or not yet. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today.
Right.
It's also a good reminder. If I can offer anything to your comment, would be this. But I think this is something I hear a lot, and I feel for you guys. But I think higher power has a plan. We don't see it yet. but we have to have faith that everything is going to be all right in the end. And if it's not all right, it's not the end.
And there may never be an end. And you know what I mean? And I mean, it's just that this cyclically, we're just going to go on. And how in this moment, which I'm with my friend Anne, and we're just having a chat, in this moment, everything right here, right now is perfect. It's all good right in this next breath. Finding my breath has been an incredible gift.
Is it something that you practice, the
Yes.
breathing holotropic breath work?
I'm not that cool yet. I wish I was. I really wish I was. I've always loved yoga. And I recently closed my business, and I'm actually going to go get my yoga license. Part of that is with, I don't know if I'll ever teach. I have no idea. I'm kind of old. But I just want to get it for the knowledge, also to deepen my spiritual life. I'm going to a very traditional yoga school, just 200. That for me is a commitment to my spiritual path, to stay on my path. That is my survival in this world. I have to stay strong spiritually, and I can survive the world. I can survive this life. I don't want to die. When I think about how dark it was, sometimes it literally does. It takes my breath away at how dark it was. Even a year ago at this time, even 3 months ago, 2 years ago, when I began the ketamine treatments, it was really hard to stay here. And it's not so hard anymore. That's what this has done for me.
I think it's a beautiful encouragement to a lot of people who are going to be listening to this, and sadly maybe where you were.
Yeah.
And your story is a story of hope and perseverance and faith, because there is a lot of trust you had to put into people, into the plant medicine, into yourself, to come through to the other side. And I think it's a very inspirational journey that you've shared with us today, Brenda. And for that, I'm very thankful. And it's courageous of you to revisit those dark times and give hope to many people.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you.
And before we close, do you have anything that you wish I'd asked you, or any closing comments you want to leave us with?
I wish I had some profound thing to say. I really do.
You already have said a lot of beautiful and profound things, and
goodness,
it is such a beautiful episode. I'm really looking forward to sharing this with the PIR Fellowship and people on Spotify and Apple Music and wherever you are listening to Brenda.
No. Okay. I mean, whoa. Okay.
There is hope.
There's hope. There's hope.
Mostly in this broadcast, we talk about addiction, but there is hope to treat depression too, body dysmorphia, all sorts of mental health issues. This is why we created this podcast, is to spread the message as far and wide, and not a message of an panacea of the magic cure for everything. And I think it was really important to explain, like you did, that it is work. It works if you work it, and if you work it with the right people. So
important to have, even my husband starts repeating set and setting because he knows that's the thing. And it truly has been life-changing. My only hope and wish is that everyone had access to the kind of help that I've been able to get. That is, hopefully will have some opening of minds. I think it's happening. I think that we're on the precipice of some real tolerance and understanding of this.
I hope so too. Well, on this, we are going to close this episode. Thank you again very much, Brenda, and look forward to seeing you soon in a PIR meeting. Take care.
Very good. Bye, Anne.
Psychedelics in Recovery is a peer-led fellowship guided by anonymity, non-endorsement, and mutual respect. Thank you for listening and for placing principles before personalities.